Hi, welcome back to Movie Review Mom. I'm the mom and I do the movie reviews. And today I'm so excited to talk about a movie that I actually saw in a movie theater. It has been over a year since I've been in a movie theater, which is crazy because I used to go every single week. So the movie I'm talking about is A Quiet Place 2. This dramatic horror film opens in theaters on May 28th, 2021. And in the UK, the film actually won't be available until June 3rd. In the United States, however, A Quiet Place 2 will also be available on the Paramount Plus streaming service, but not until after 45 days from its theatrical release. In other words, if you want to see this, you need to go to theaters. Now, I know it is a big decision whether or not to go into a theater, and not everybody's ready, and I haven't been ready up until now. I've been vaccinated, and that alone is a big decision, and I waited a really long time and tried to do research and make the best decision I could. But anyway, I went into the theaters today, so I'll tell you more about that in a second. Okay, so this movie is rated PG-13. It's an hour and 37 minutes, and I'll give you my movie review mom grade at the end just to keep you watching. And by the way, thank you for watching and subscribing to my YouTube channel. Be sure and click down below in the description, read all that stuff. You'll find links to all the movies, and tell all your friends to come join us over here. All right, I'm going to give you an overview in a nutshell. I'll point out things I liked and didn't like, as well as offer tips for parents because it's rated PG-13 and your kids might be interested. And I'll point out some themes that are worth talking about and offer some recommendations for other movies that I think you'll also really enjoy if you like this one. Okay, let's dig in. So, A Quiet Place 2 was really one of the very first films to delay its theater release when the pandemic first started. So, I think it's also interesting that now, as restrictions for masks are being lifted, people are now vaccinated, that theaters might start to get a little bit more attendance. So, this was actually the very first press screener that I've even been invited to in person since the pandemic began. They checked our temperature, they made us wear masks, even though our state has lifted that mandate. They're just trying to be extra careful. So there were 9 other film critics and I scattered throughout this huge theater. So we were safely distanced from one another. So the movie picks up right where it left off from the first film. And following the horrific events at home, the Abbott family now faces the terrors of the outside world. Forced to venture into the unknown, they realize the creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats lurking beyond that sand path. This dramatic thriller was written and directed by the wonderful John Krasinski. We all fell in love with him when he first appeared in The Office, right? He wrote the first film with Scott Beck and Brian Woods, but this movie is all John Krasinski. They declined to help with the writing so they could work on some other projects. And in fact, he even wasn't planning on doing a sequel. He said he got Jedi mind tricked into doing it. I loved his Some Good News YouTube channel during the pandemic. Did you ever see that? He just really does seem like such a nice guy. And it is such a delightful reveal that he's also an incredible writer and director. I'm so happy for him. This is a rare sequel that is as good as its original. Another film critic that I watched the movie with this morning described his review in these words. He said, "A great sequel to a movie that didn't need a sequel." In other words, he loved it too. Everyone is saying that this film was definitely worth the wait, and this just might be the movie that gets people going back to theaters again. So let me tell you about some of the things I really liked about this movie. First of all, who doesn't love John Krasinski and Emily Blunt together? They both look fantastic in this movie. Despite John Krasinski's character's demise in the first movie, you do get to see him for a few scenes that feature day one of the alien invasion. He and Emily admitted that neither one of them had considered doing a sequel. She really wasn't interested until she read that first opening sequence, and then she was all in. The talented cast also includes Jimon Hansu and Killian Murphy. Millicent Simmons, who plays Reagan Abbott, the daughter, is actually deaf in real life. This is her third film after the original, A Quiet Place, and she also did Wonderstruck. She's a really good young actress, and it's such a pleasure to watch her on the big screen. Noah Jupe plays her brother, and together they provide the hope that the adults so desperately need in the story. There is so much suspense and tension with plenty of action that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The movie has all of the jumps and scares that you would hope that it would. And every time I jumped, I just laughed because I really wasn't expecting it. It was great. I mean, they're jumps and scares. The opening sequence that I mentioned is just riveting. One of the things that I had mentioned in my review of the first movie was that I wish that we could have seen more about what happened on day one. How did all of this start? And if you remember in the first movie, you just start like already in the thick of these events. So with this movie, here you go. You get to see day one. The aliens are absolutely intriguing, but the characters are truly the heart of the movie. You get to see the aliens up close and personal and often, which I love. We also get to learn a little bit more about why they're so sensitive to sound. Speaking of sound, the sound effects are really impressive, even though during a lot of the part of the movie, there isn't any talking. So that's especially impressive to me. There are several camera shots that reminded me of the incredible destruction in Tom Cruise's War of the Worlds. Do you remember like the big airplane crash set that you can now see at Universal Studios? There's just a couple of moments like that I was like, oh, that's good. John Krasinski really pays attention to details, which I also love in movies. For example, we see his character grabbing a few items in the local store. As he walks by some shelves, we see that toy rocket ship that's featured in the very first movie. Do you remember that? No spoilers. Well, if you haven't seen the first movie, come on, you've had plenty of time. I loved seeing the small town community in the very first scene during normal life. A lot of people have a romantic notion of living in such a town where everyone knows and trusts each other, right? Including me. And I thought that the pandemic had made us realize what's really important in life and that it would help people to be more kind and gentle with one another. But it seems like now that I've been going out and about more, people are super rude and impatient and just makes me wonder, wow, what happened? And actually, I got a text from a friend who said the same thing today, like, what's going on out there? All right, enough of that. You'll definitely get goosebumps while you watch this movie. One of the things that I really love about this movie and it's original is that a great horror movie doesn't have to be a slasher, bloody and gory and disgusting. The horror comes with the tension and the suspense. And John Krasinski does it very, very well. It definitely helps to have seen the first movie in this little franchise, but you definitely can enjoy this movie on its own, even still. But if you haven't seen part one of A Quiet Place, what are you waiting for? All right. So when it came to things that I didn't like, I really had to scratch my head and really think about it. I thought about how the family left their house after the end of the last movie. And I thought, well, why couldn't they have stayed? I mean, really, they knew how to protect themselves. Yes, there was some destruction, but at least that area was familiar. But instead, they go and they venture out. Now, that's not necessarily a big critique of film quality or anything like that. I was really grasping for straws because I honestly couldn't think of anything I didn't like. I really enjoyed the movie. Let me give you some tips for parents. First of all, young kids are going to be scared because it's scary. People are constantly in danger. Many people die or get hurt. And there is some blood, but it's not like super bloody, gory, like a lot of horror movies. You definitely get to see the monsters and the aliens up close, and they're scary. So, again, this isn't really a movie for young kids. Teenagers will get a kick out of it. You see skeletons, dead bodies that have been laying there for who knows how long. And then there is just a tiny bit of profanity. Now, the movie illustrates some themes really well, I think, such as hope. And I love movies that use the theme of hope, it's so powerful. Other themes are also trust, loyalty, unity, family, fear, community, and certainly communication. That is such a vital element of the story about being quiet and then even just communicating ideas and philosophies and all of that. I don't want to give anything away. All right. So I also always write down funny lines and interesting lines. And I didn't write any funny lines, but I did write, because it's a dramatic horror, I'm very serious, but I did write some interesting lines. You can also see my full review at moviereviewmom.com. So one of the new characters is Jimon Hansu, and he plays Man on the Island. That's the name they gave him in the credits. And he's talking to someone who was describing all of these horrific things that have been going on. And he says, "You're here now, new day." Again, just kind of a powerful way of describing hope, right? And then again, he's talking to this time Emmett, and he says, as he describes, everything he did to get to that island, and he says, "That's determination." And the other man says, "It's necessity." So I thought that that was really interesting. Okay, and there are other lines, but I don't want to give you any spoilers. Okay, so with that, you could pretty much tell the movie review mom grade I'm giving this is an A. I thought it was really well done, and I just love John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. So I'm just so happy for them and the success of this franchise. There's already rumors that there's going to be a third one, but John Krasinski is saying, no, I'm not going to be a part of that one. But again, he could be Jedi tricked into that as well. Who knows? Anyway, so let me give you some recommendations for some other movies. The first one is, of course, to see the first A Quiet Place, if you haven't seen that one already. So great. And it's, again, so unusual that a sequel is as good. And some people are even saying better than the first one. I really like the first one, too. I mean, they're both really great. Another movie that came to my mind is Cloverfield. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. It's really great at building tension and suspense as people are trying to figure out what happened and how to survive and how to avoid being eaten and all that kind of stuff. My big complaint on that one is you don't get to see all the aliens up close and personal like you do on this one. But another movie where you do get to see aliens up close and personal is War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise. And I mentioned that one earlier. It's intense. It's so scary. Anyway, it's really good. And it's also all about family and persistence and survival and hope. Okay, that's it for my movie review. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me.